Hey, everybody. So, this week's article is going to be Can you put a price on COVID-19 options? Experts weigh lives versus economics. So, I am in the Edge browser. I have my article pulled up, and I'm going to go up here to the top right where it has a book, and you're going to click the book and open up Reading View. So, when you're reading this by yourself, you're going to want to click that Read Aloud button. If you're reading along with me and annotating, you're going to want to click the pen right here where it says add notes. But yeah, you just click, this toolbar will open up. If you want to change anything, make the font larger, smaller, you want to do like a gray. I kind of like the gray better. Um, things like that. Click the read aloud if you want to read it. Okay, so let's get started. And we'll click the pen, pull up our tool here. The coronavirus pandemic is closing businesses around the United States, including this restaurant in Boston. Econom- economist Sergio Rebello has spent the past 2 weeks holed up in his Chicago home, working feverishly to crack the economics of the coronavirus. Armed with a hybrid model that combines how viruses spread with how people work and consume, the Northwestern University researcher is one of a number of macroeconomists. I'm going to probably circle that because what does that mean? Now trying to shed light on the balance between the economic impact of locking down major parts of the economy and the economic damage wrought by the disease itself. When you think about the optimal policy, you really want to see the effect between the economy and epidemiology. So you might want to circle this because you might not know what that is. I would suggest looking that up. All right, let's keep going. So we're going to click the save. We're going to save it to our quick notes. And we're going to close this. Come on, computer. I'm going to drink a bit of my coffee while we wait. There we go. We click to the next page. Now we got lots of text. And you know what? I'm going to make this bigger, I think, the font size. Maybe that was a mistake. There we go. Next page. Let's click text options. I'm going to make it a little bit bigger. There we go. Okay, pen time. It is much more than an academic exercise. Much of the world economy has shuddered to a halt. So that means it's stopped. In the United States alone, a record 3.3 million people filed for unemployment benefits in late March. So if you are in the camp of for opening, this is where you would want to put that. President Donald Trump once mused about lifting pandemic restrictions by mid-April to prevent more economic damage, but ultimately settled on extending federal advice to maintain physical distancing through the end of April. Trump reversed course after epidemiologists warned that a return to normal behavior could spark an explosion of COVID-19 infections, killing as many as 2 million Americans. So we could highlight this, and the note I would put would be if 2 million were supposed to die if everything was lifted in April, how many could die if they are lifted in May? Question that I would ask. Here we go again. Okay. With strong interventions, models reviewed by the White House suggest deaths could be reduced by 100,000 perhaps or fewer, or perhaps fewer. So this is a great example. If you are against, see, evidence against opening. Here we go. Trump's decision, however, has only put off the question of when exactly cities and states should begin to ease up on distancing orders. If you keep the shutdown going for 2 months more than we need to, that's just an unbelievable unbelievably costly mistake. If we lift the shutdown 2 months too soon, that would be an unbelievably costly mistake. So, right here, he's saying basically if we go 2 months more, we could lose a lot of money. It could be really bad for the economy. But if we lift it 2 months too soon, then we're talking about a cost of people's lives. That was said by James Stock of Harvard University, who was working with public health experts to develop models weighing the economic trade offs of different containment strategies. This is a new territory for macroeconomics economists, more familiar with gauging how interest rates might influence employment. So, interest rates are like if you take a loan or you have a house or something like that, they charge interest rates. Those are constantly kind of changing. When they're in bad times, they can either go up or down, depending. And so that can influence employment, like how many jobs there are, right? Even health economics have economists, sorry guys, even health economists have little experience modeling a pandemic so threatening and disruptive, says Beta Sandard, a health economist at the University of Toronto who worked on a 2009 study of the cost of different interventions to treat an influenza pandemic. School closures were the most extreme scenario in Sanders' early study. We couldn't imagine that this would be something we would be forced to resort to because we would be so unprepared. So, do you think that we were unprepared? Probably, right? I'll put a question in there. But Rebello had previously adapted models of epidemics to simulate how changing attitudes spread through a society, contributing to booms and busts in the housing market. When the novel coronavirus appeared in the United States, he started to think about how to put the model to work on a real virus. So before he was making like simulations, probably using a computer. And so now he decided to actually put it into place with the whole coronavirus. The cost of shuttering large parts of the economy is relatively easy for Rebello and his collaborators. Northwestern University economist Martin, I don't know why I'm having such a hard time with that, guys, sorry, and Mathis Trabant of the Free University of Berlin to translate into money, the currency of economics. On the economic side, their model calculates how the disease and government policies would influence how much people work and buy. So, what they're looking at, let's just go here because there's a lot of gobbledygook in there. Model calculates the impact of the disease and government policies. So, basically, how does self isolation or shutting down things affect how countries work and buy? That's basically what they're saying, right? I mean, that's the big question. How does it affect it? But the dollars and cents of a virus are less intuitive. Rebello uses a modified version of what is known as an SIR model, an acronym for categories of people. So those that could get it, which is susceptible, infected, which obviously they have it, and recovered. So those are the ones that made it through. It simulates how a disease moves through a population based on how infections and lethal it is, and how much contact people have with each other. To put a price on the results, Rebello takes a number of predicted deaths and calculates an economic estimate of the value of the lost lives. The approach is similar to the price that the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency used to gauge the costs and benefits of environmental regulations. So, people are worth 9.5 million according to this simulation. And he's looking for a, what would you say? Like he's looking for a comparison between opening and closing the country and its cost. So basically he's saying like, okay, so if all these people are worth 9.5 million, and we keep it open, what happens? If we keep it closed, what happens? How much is the cost going to be? All right. His initial modeling efforts showed that even a year long lockdown makes economic sense to allow time for a vaccine to be developed. The pause would shrink the economy by approximately 22%, a cost of 4.2 trillion. By comparison, the model that shows that without containment, so at this point this is going to be a for or against opening. So this is a against opening evidence right here. Because basically his initial modeling showed that even a long lockdown makes economic sense. All right, we're clicking the save button. Save to quick notes. No thanks. Let's close it. Drink some coffee. All right, we're back up. 1, 2, last page. We are clicking the pen. Let's do this. The economy would contract by about 7% over that year, but so basically go down about 7%. But as many as 500,000 additional lives would be lost, which translates into a loss of roughly 6.1 trillion. So if they didn't keep it closed, that's how much it would cost by lives. Andrew Atkinson, an economist at the University of California, Los Angeles, agrees that the economics point strongly towards strict measures. Here's another one. And I would make sure that you include where these guys are from, right? Because we want economics and economists. Oh my God, I don't know why that's so hard. Economists, because that's going to be related to this, right? We want epidemiologists and we want economists. Those are the two people we want. If we start seeing doctors or crazy people on the internet, we don't necessarily want to listen to what they're saying, either for or against, because they don't have the background. We want to listen to people that have a background in what we're trying to figure out or decide on. If the epidemic is allowed to grow unhindered, he predicts the economy will grind to a halt anyway as people see an explosion of infections and stop going out. Either you shut off the economy now and have people staying at home, or you let this thing rip and you have people staying at home scared. So, what he's saying is that if you don't shut it down, people will start dying at higher rates and scare everyone home. So, that's the other option. Rebello cautions that his model is simplistic, so it's just very simple, easy, and that maybe he's saying that it's not 100% reliable, which is fair, right? Because it's a simulation, it's a model, it's not actual real life. And also, uh, if you wanted to, for those that are for opening, you could put who determines cost of a life. Right? I mean, this guy put lives at like 4.5 million or whatever it was. But if you are for opening, you could ask who determines the cost of a life. Maybe you think that lives are less than that. Okay. So they hope to include the size of a different age group in the United States to account for differences in how deadly the disease is for different ages, and modified smart lockdowns that allow for more economic activity. So this would probably be shutting down things where older people go, or maybe maintaining strict, all right, we'll put keeping strict regulations on nursing homes. So you wouldn't be able to go visit grandma and grandpa at the nursing home because that's locked down, but maybe you could go to a restaurant as long as they, had some regulations on that. So you could put that in there as well for opening with regulations. Okay. That's maybe where all these economies are going because it's going to be hard to shut down the economy for a very extended time. Economists are also weighing subtler interactions between health and economics, including the possibility that the economic shock itself will add to the body count. So, this was something that I've heard before. So, this would be a great piece of evidence for those that are for opening. They're basically saying that if things start to go downhill, people will suffer with depression, health, anxiety due to loss of monetary items, right? If you lose your whole retirement, you're probably not going to be in a very good mental health state. Public health experts broadly agree that more suicide happens in recessions. Scientists found an additional 4,750 suicides in the United States over 3 years, attributed to the Great Recession of 2008. Now, so that's a great example or evidence for opening. And then it also could be an example for against, because against, you can say, look, over 3 years, only 5,000 people had killed themselves because of the Great Recession. Meanwhile, we're talking about 500,000 people dying because of this disease. So that's kind of your choice. So for opening, look at the suicide rate. Against opening, okay, suicide rate versus additional lives lost is uncomparable. Incomparable. Suicide rate. Oh god. Okay. Yet economic downturns have typically translated into a net drop in deaths in economics at the University of Virginia, who has studied the phenomenon. Although suicide rates can rise, decreased economic activity can save lives, partly because it reduces traffic accidents and air pollution. So that's another one where you could go either way. There are notable exceptions. Death rates rose in Russia following the collapse of the Soviet Union because the economic downturn was part of a broader social collapse. In the case of the coronavirus pandemic, he says it's too soon to know how much of an impact this would really have, right? It could increase or it could decrease. So that's another thing that you could put for, against, too soon to tell. So you could say it's too soon to tell, which is why we need to open it up and see what happens. Too soon to tell, which is why we need to be cautious and save lives. Those are your two options. The modelers still lack basic data. The most critical is a better estimate of how deadly the disease is. In his modeling, which supports long, strict lockdowns, Rebello used statistics from South Korea, which has some of the most comprehensive testing, to estimate that 0.5% of all infected people die. But if it turns out a lot of people get infected and have few symptoms, the economically sensible approach might be to let the infection spread and accept that there will be some death toll, Stock says. The policies are extremely different depending upon these parameters that we don't know. So the last article said basically ended in the same way, right? It said blah, 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 blah. Testing. We don't have enough tests. We don't have enough data. We cannot predict what's going to happen. We cannot predict economy versus lives until we have all of the data. So that's something that you can state on either way, right? Like we did in the last one. So we're going to put in here, we need more data and more testing. All right. Okay, that's it. We're going to click save again. Make sure it's OneNote, quick note, save, and we are all good to go. All right. Make sure that you answer all the questions on this and get all your notes down. And I will talk to you sometime this week.